Hey. I clicked the link early. Let me try to get some more light in here. Hang on.
I'm doing the same.
Okay. Maybe a little better. There we go.
Yeah, I'm having the lighting issue too. I even have an extra light in here and it's still, oh, that's my timer. Tell me to be here.
Cool.
Hey everyone, this is Michelle Martin Dobbins, and this is another episode of Adventures in Alchemy. And I'm really excited today because I have one of my favorite people here with me, and that is Salimah Perkins. And she is the proprietor of Highest Good Wellness. And we have known each other online for several years now. And she's one of my favorite people to chat with about all things spiritual. So I'm really excited to welcome her to the show and learn a little bit more about her business. So welcome, Salimah.
Thank you, Michelle. You're one of my favorite people too.
We have our little mutual fan club going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really excited that you have branched out because you've been doing this for a little while, right? And you live in the Baltimore area.
I live in the Baltimore area, and I would say that I have been coming into the place where my interests in healing and alternate modalities and sort of, I want to say different, not necessarily different from the mainstream, but alternative spirituality has been coalescing for a few years. I think like you, I've always been drawn to the metaphysical, but I hadn't really followed that through as like one cogent line, of thinking. I hadn't really put together what that meant. Always a deeply spiritual person, even as a young child. And the earliest expression of that was in much more traditional Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say that I'm not a Christian now, but it's more that I've allowed my concept of like what being a spiritual person means to expand a little bit. And I was just always very open to like practices like Reiki. Like I've had friends who are Reiki practitioners, and I believe that everything at the, at the basis is energy. Like, so we start there, right?
Right.
And so just being receptive to receiving the treatment and feeling the benefit of that. And then, reading more. If I become interested in a topic, I will devour any bit of reading there is, right? And I know we have that in common too. I just become sort of like an automaton, and I get tunnel vision, and I will study it until I feel like I've, taken it to the most extreme place of knowledge. And then I sort of incorporate that and think, okay, how can I use it? How can I apply it? And even as a young child, really drawn to astrology and anything in the spirit realm, anything magical, not magic per se, like as an art, like, no summoning or like, doing spells or like, tricks, no sleight of hand, but just very drawn to the miraculous. Mm-hmm. And the other, just really, really intrigued by that world. So it sort of all came together over the last few years. I want to credit developing a daily meditation practice as sort of the path to the cohesive vision. The more still I got, the more I invited alchemy and your podcast and like things like that into my life. I found you quite by accident online, and your voice was so soothing to me. I think I listened one day at work while I was, editing and doing my tasks to no fewer than 20 of your podcasts in a row. And they were so brief that they were like quick, I could just go through them. And I thought, who is this woman? I really like her spirit. I like your energy calmed me down and made me able to focus. So anyway, that's my roundabout way of saying that just becoming a more meditative, contemplative person gave me the room to figure out how all these pieces were going to fit together.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I know you and I talked, it's been a while back, but I think we were like the only people on a call one time. we were talking about the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
Yes.
I find that topic so interesting of like, because if, people aren't familiar with the book, basically that was like his spiritual practice was he meditated, and he meditated a lot, like what, 5, 6, sometimes more hours a day. I think he meditated sometimes more than he slept. And he had the miraculous just came pouring into his life. And I think we don't necessarily have to go as far as he did to get that. But when we bring that practice in, then everything that we need just kind of lines up synchronistically. Yeah. So I was just curious though, with your take, on his book, I think we talked about it before a little bit, how much do you think we should guide where we're going, or should we be because he really didn't guide where he was going. He just kind of meditated, and then whatever showed up. Oh, you want me to build a house? Okay, I'm going to build a house. And then we became, a carpenter, but it was not planned. And so just curious, because sometimes I feel like I want to take the reins a little bit more. And I feel like if I have a desire, it's coming from spirit. So I don't necessarily have to wait all the time. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I have no criticisms of his path because it was the right one for him. But there were times when I was reading, his Surrender Experiment book where I thought, this is it's a little passive for my tastes, And like you, I kind of feel like the nudge from spirit is my own inclination. It's my instinct. So if I'm drawn to this, let me explore why. Where I found the benefit in a lot of his sharing of his story really came down to the surrender piece. So once you know what you want and you have a desire, surrendering or letting go of your attachment to a specific outcome or the way it's going to look is where I could really apply that, being untethered to a specific result, because I can have a very concrete and fixed notion of what success would look like and what failure would look like. And I was constantly being batted between, in a pinball machine, success, failure, and just never hitting either one. And so his book really helped me to say, okay, I think he began with something really simple like the weather. Can I surrender my feelings about the weather? Okay, it's raining. What does that have to do with me? Why is that my business? As opposed to it being sunny. And removing my concept of what success would look like and success to me just meant, being happy, being comfortable, feeling competent, like I could move around in the world. And, I was just sort of never hitting my own internal marks. And so meditation sort of got me a little bit out of the mindset of an attachment to an outcome. And once I started letting go of that, there was so much freedom in it. And then more ideas about what I wanted to do and what really lit me up could come to the fore. What does Lao Tzu say, or what did he say? To the mind that is still, the entire universe surrenders. And so I would say, it starts with the stillness. It starts with the getting quiet and just sort of letting everything go. I always say you put it all back on the table. And anything that survives your reevaluation is meant to stay, at least for the next go round, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. I love that, because I find it's kind of like a paradox, because when you decide what you want and then you surrender it, then it comes, but it doesn't always come in the form that you think it should. But then it always comes in the form that's the best, it seems like, for me.
Right. No, that's absolutely true. And one of my hangups was, okay, I'm in my early 40s now, 44. So technically almost, middle 40s, closer to 50 than 40.
Yeah, me too.
And then I thought, how can I be almost 50 when I clearly remember being 11? And I remember the desires that came with being 11. And I think in my mind, think of myself as a fairly young woman. And I'm in no way, putting a judgment on what 50 me, or not meaning to. In a way, I guess I am. I don't think that 50 is old, but I was like, wow, I mean, I'm at the point now where more than half of my life has passed, and I'm just figuring out what I want to do, and I was kind of judging myself for that. I'm like, okay, I've decided to be a Reiki master and a holistic life coach, and I've, taken a shine to the tarot. Like, I'm like, what am I? This is something you do when you're 20. I was joking with my sisters. I was like, I feel like we've switched places, because my youngest sister is a musician and has only ever lived off of her art. She's got a business. She does like private lessons, and she has consistent gigs. And I'm like, like 44 at the family holiday being like, yeah, I think I'm going to be certified in, divine healing energy. Like, it just sounds like, why did you figure this out when you were 25 and have already turned this into a thriving enterprise? So I had to really let go of what being a successful woman who is in her mid-40s looks like, because I don't feel like it. I feel like kind of a flibberty-gibbet, you know what I mean? Like a will-o'-the-wisp. And
believe me, I totally get that. And it's funny though, because my daughter, she's on the cusp of, like, she's graduating from high school this weekend, and she's moving out and like exploring the world, and she's doing I'm too young to do this. And I'm like, sweetheart, when I was your age, I said that too. And guess what? Now I'm saying I'm too old, and I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm just going to do what my heart calls me to do, because, it doesn't matter. It's all just a story that we make up about how we should be at a certain place. And I know for me, it's been interesting because I've been journaling a lot lately on, those childhood dreams and desires, and like when I felt free when I was a child. And it's interesting how you forget, and you like let the world, I don't know, like erase or take you from your own place of power and your own place of joy. And so I think it's amazing that we're reconnecting with that, whatever age we are,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing I have to remind myself is that some of the trappings, like the subculture around the tradition, like mainstream expression of Christianity, is what sort of tamped down a lot of my instincts. Because if you are in the evangelical church, for example, having an inclination toward astrology and anything that isn't, explicitly Jesus did this for me, is frowned upon. There's no room for it. And you think, okay, well, I've had a meaningful spiritual life through this faith, and the following things, according to the rules of it, are wrong or incompatible. And so you spend decades tamping down these instincts that you have.
Yeah.
And my feeling about God was always that, the universe was certainly, if he could be contained by my rules about him, then he couldn't really be, this powerful, all-loving force. I was like, I don't think God is threatened by my interest in astrology. And to me, anything that's true, good, beautiful, lovely, like if one believes in God, or, if we want to use that particular nomenclature, then all that's got to fall under the jurisdiction of this divine being. Like, it can't, nothing that, if God is all powerful, then there's nothing that was made that's outside of, like, the reins of that, that love, that beautiful umbrella. And so once I stopped
speaking to it, he's speaking to us, or God,
right,
in like whatever, like if it's a tarot card, or if it's a
right,
sign on the wall, or whatever, he's gonna, like, I agree with you. He's not like contained by one book and one set of rules, and that's the only way that you can connect with that energy.
Exactly. And so once I allowed myself to stop fighting my own instincts, and that can be like one's life's work, is to stop fighting against the thing that you're drawn to, or the people that you're drawn to. It's about, authenticity, and once I thought, okay, I am someone who is interested and who traffics in what feels magical and miraculous, and not the paranormal in terms of like, ghost stuff, although I just believe in the spirit world. I'm very interested in what's happening in that realm, and wanting to bring that in very concrete, practical ways into the way that I live my life. I just always want to make room for the feeling of magic and for things, outside of our expectations to surprise and delight us. And I think that can all come together. So Highest Good Wellness was born for me when I thought, okay, I have all of these apparently disparate interests that aren't incompatible, but they don't necessarily go together. I feel most empowered when I'm empowering others. And what is the job that describes that? Okay, well, it's life coaching, but I don't want to be one of those in 5 easy steps you'll have the job of your dreams. I was like, I believe concrete results are great. I'm in no way opposed to them. I'm a very practical thinker, but I'm also a magical thinker. And I was like, I need to bring my love of the concrete alongside my love of the abstract, and like give them a place where they can work and play together. And I was like, so it wouldn't just be life coaching, it would be holistic. It would be, I see how the spirit and the body and the mind and the soul all want to interact. So we have to address all parts of that. And so I, came across Your Spirited Life, which was created by Annie Michelli, and she had a holistic life coaching certification program. And I thought, okay, that dovetails with what I want, because it's making room for all of those things to sort of be working together. I was like, I'm interested in astrology. And, I resisted the tarot for a long time because that was one of the really big, bad, verboten, things. So it's like, oh no, now we're getting into the devil's work, right?
I know. I had a deck that I, when I was in college, and then like I went through a period of time where I got rid of it, and yeah. It was actually a really cool deck, and now I was like,
Yeah, but I did the baby pool version. It's like I started with oracle cards. I was like, okay, well, I can rationalize to myself how this isn't the same as tarot, and they do have separate functions, but a lot of oracle cards sort of have the same structure. Mm-hmm. And the same, some of the same underpinnings as the tarot without being tarot specifically. And I know that practitioners have their different philosophies about how those two different systems work. But I was like, well, if everything is energy, I can totally see how I could draw cards or I could draw messages that sort of match where I am right now. And when I took the divination piece out of it initially, that sort of helped me and it opened me up. And then I thought, no, sometimes these cards are predictive in a way that transcends sense. You know what I mean? And so and then I was just amassing more and more decks, and I was like, I have to just be honest. I am good at this and I'm interested in it. So of course, the next thing I do, my next step is always, let's take a class. Let's get a piece of paper that says you're good at this, because I want there to be some credibility, some veracity, I believe it's an art. And I don't believe that certification makes a person, it doesn't prove anything, but to me, it's that way of saying, I took this seriously enough and I want to have integrity toward it. So I want to legitimize my interest by pursuing coursework or something like that. So I thought, okay, well, Reiki and tarot and holistic life coaching, I need to bring this all together under an umbrella. And I saw plenty of models for it. I was like, Michelle Martin Dobbins is a model for how to bring seemingly disparate or unconnected interests together under one umbrella. And more, like on Twitter, there are people like, here's my, tarot reading schedule. And they're talking about, magic and alchemy and, offering coaching services. And I thought, this isn't that weird at all. There's actually so many templates for this.
Right.
And so what would I bring that is different? And that would just be, me, my particular bent, this really practical, concrete thinker with a pinch of magic thrown in, and, just wanting to live and work outside of the confines of a cubicle farm and a 9-to-5 structure that was just not feeding my spirit anymore,
Yeah. And your beautiful energy, because I love your energy and your
thank you.
And if anybody doesn't know you and know what a wonderful writer you are, like that's something I'm waiting for, Salimah. I'm waiting for your book.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Your worm in there.
Okay. Received. It's there.
I don't know. Have you thought about doing a book?
I have. And in fact, I have 2 master's degrees in writing. One that's a specific concentration in poetry, and the other is creative writing and publishing arts. And I've been a writer since I was very, very young. And one of the things I want to do is to work in a way that will allow me to write. Like, I want to be able to sustain myself financially, spiritually, emotionally through highest good wellness ultimately. But I want to do the kind of work that gives me enough time to write. And, you know, I've got an interest in nonfiction and fiction and poetry. And I think ultimately my magnum opus is probably something that will combine all of those things, like a multi-genre, like sort of, well, if you've read some of my blog posts and my op-eds, and so you kind of have a feeling for like my voice. But yeah, I am working on something, and I hope to bring that to the fore. And maybe highest good wellness is like really giving myself to that work will sort of free me up to do it, because I've had a lot of blockages. You know, I've had to own I'm a really blocked up. I have been a blocked up person because I have a lot of limiting beliefs that I have to bust through. So
yeah, but well, I think everyone that you bust through like frees up your voice a little bit more and a little bit more.
Yeah,
you've been doing the work for a while now, so
yeah.
Beautiful. So I mean, I love your writing, and I guess going off of that, I was going to ask you, because I had just read just a little piece that you put up about chopping as a form of meditation, talking about chopping up your vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to bring that up and ask you about, like, is that part of your daily practice? Because that's something, I don't always do it as a daily practice, but I love, like, when I disconnect from my meditation, or I feel like I'm just disconnected, like doing something like washing the dishes or vacuuming, or just like that simple mindless tasks, but really, really being present to them is like one of my favorite ways to
meditate, right? Yeah, most of my meditation is the traditional, you know, sit in an ambiently lit room and, you know, connect with the breath. And I don't think there's any substitute for that, but I want people to feel free to understand what the spirit of meditation really is. And for people who just aren't inclined, or they're not in a place right now where a sit is meaningful to them, or they can't approach it that way, you know, if you really come into a time of stillness and contemplation in your life, you'll find that it's everything. There's really no point at which you aren't meditating once you become a meditator, or once you like sort of tap into what that means.
Yeah.
And you know the phrase, very, very old and, you know, deeply coined and entrenched now in our lexicon, in the zone. Mm-hmm. Meditation is being in the zone. And I don't think anybody is ever happier than when they have this moment where they come out of being in their zone and they're like, wow, for the last hour, I was just like fully in it. I was present to what I was doing. I was there. I got it. I was in sync with myself to the point that there was no separation between me and the work I was doing. And when you get into a rhythm with gardening or chopping or writing, or, I don't know, scrubbing your bathtub, and you're just there, and it's like, again, that Lao Tzu saying, to the mind that is still, the entire universe surrenders. Answers to deep mysteries always bubble up and sort of come to us. We're in that moment where we sort of are able to be behind our own thinking, and we're just sort of observing ourselves. We're such a part of the work that there's no separation between us and the work, and yet there's deep awareness that's possible. And so I thought, you know, I got to cut myself a break. On the days when I don't get in a sit, was I able to be present to the work that I was doing, you know, to the conversations I was having. And also, I just want meditation and wellness and wholeness to feel accessible to people. I'm like, okay, so maybe, you know, you haven't downloaded the latest meditation app, but, you know, did you chop vegetables today? Did you wash your dishes? You know, did you go to your job and really, really, you know, open yourself up to, like, you know, just being present in your own body while you were doing the task? I want to separate for people spirituality from practical living, because really the most spiritual thing you can do is to just really be present to your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what sort of led me there. You know, I was like, you know, let me just write a quick little blog. And you were the person who helped me with that. It's like, not everything has to be this deep thesis. You could do 6 minutes of like, hey, you know, here's something magical that happened to me. you have been such an instrumental part in getting me here. And I'm so glad I get to, I mean, I've told you that, but I really want all of your listeners to hear and understand like the deep impact that you, I mean, you basically helped me to coalesce what my vision was going to be. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And that like, that touches my heart, because I'm like, I'm doing the same thing that you're doing, letting go of that resistance and just doing what I feel called to do. And if it helps somebody else do the same, and then you're going to help other people do the same, it's cool how it all ripples out. And,
yep. Our teacher, it's like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And you were like over the last 2.5 years, one of the voices that sort of appeared to me seemingly out of the ether, in the context of, listening to podcasts, because I'm something of an audiophile, and while I'm working, I listen to audiobooks or podcasts or the news, and I'm very stimulated by new information and like new things to digest. And so it actually helps me to be more productive if I'm listening to something while I work. Some people can't do that, I know, but I definitely respond well to that. And yeah, it was finding the Daily Alchemy podcast and downloading some of your ebooks. And I thought, this woman is so generous, even for people who aren't, at the time, paying members of Daily Alchemy. There were so many takeaways and giveaways, and your generosity with making so many resources available, it just demonstrated so much to me, the value add, and it made me want to pay for and engage your content in a more deep way. And I thought, every single podcast, every blog post, every download, every topic, like there was such a variety, like, raising your vibration and totems and spirit animals. And I thought, Michelle Martin Dobbins is leaving no stone unturned. And that's very much my model. I believe that people should, pay for good content. I have no problem with the idea that, healing practitioners or wellness practitioners are offering a service and they should be compensated for it. But there was such an expansive Jupiter-like love in what you were doing, that I thought, I just want to come in and be a part of this. And it made me want to give that back. And so I don't think we don't always get to know how our kindness and how the energy behind our intentions affects other people. But it really broadened my life. And Michelle, you're such a gift to the people who come into contact with your content. So yeah, I can't stress enough. Well, like Highest Good Wellness is happening because you sort of put yourself out there as this really generous purveyor of alchemy. And I definitely felt that in my life.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And I feel like I attract in like so many, especially the first group of people who took classes from me are like, I consider to be, I haven't met most of you in person, but I still consider you to be my friends. And people, I feel really blessed because I feel like I've attracted in people who are on the same level, the same path. And it's fun because I'm getting to be me, but I'm also getting connected to like-minded people who are fun to play with out in the internet world.
Absolutely. It is my dream that you and I actually meet in person and maybe get to do something together. Maybe there's a collaboration in the future. I don't know what that would be or how it would look, but just to meet you, even if there was nothing beyond that. And, obviously I feel that I've met you and I definitely consider you a friend, but yeah, your vibe attracts your tribe, right?
Right. I know. My daughter actually, she was like, we need to make a trip up to Baltimore and we're going to West Virginia. We could go there and you can meet your friend. Cause I told her I was interviewing you. And also I have a cousin there who, my cousin's son owns a bakery. So we always like to go get his cups. She's like, it's perfect. Cupcakes and coffee. Yeah.
Yes.
I may have a calendar this summer. And visit you at Highest Wellness Good. Highest Good Wellness. Because that's something that we talk about, or I learned early on, to ask for everything to be done in the highest good. So I love that you have that in your name because it kind of covers I'm offering you this broad spectrum of options here, and we're going to find the one that's for your highest good. And so
Right.
you're offering that to your clients in that way.
Yeah. Well, you were the first person to attune me for Reiki, and that's obviously another way that we're deeply, deeply connected. And so when I was thinking about what a name would be, what an umbrella title would be for all of these services or that I want to offer, I went back to basics. You know, Reiki can only ever do the highest good. It will only ever do that. And yeah, I thought, what do I want to connote? What will fit in with oracle card readings and offering holistic life coaching services and being a Reiki practitioner? It's like none of these practices, which, you know, some people may have blocks. They may think, I'm kind of interested in that, but it's a little too on the fringe for them, at least initially. Or like me, they're like, I'm drawn to it, but I've been taught that it's not the way that one's belief should be expressed, or it's antithetical to what I believe. Because I don't believe anybody has to forsake. There's no denomination. There's no specific religion affiliated with any of this. And I sort of just wanted to remove it through the name right off the bat, any barriers that a person might have. It's like nothing happens here. Nothing is intended here except the work that your soul needs to do to feel free, to be free. And if there's anything that doesn't resonate with you, well, then it's not relevant. It's not applicable, and it will just sort of fall away. And so because intentions are so powerful, and I'd also just wanted to make that statement to myself, like that this business will only ever achieve the highest good for me and for those that I hope to serve. Yeah. So I thought, well, we need a social media presence. And one of the things I took the time to get certified in was social media marketing. Like, I love social media. I think it's fun. I think it can be used to great effect. And setting an intention there too. It's like, okay, how to be a presence, how to sort of introduce myself. And so I worked with a friend on, putting up a website so people would know, hey, I'm here. And I have an Instagram and a Twitter account that's specific to the business. And I let those things sort of mellow out. I set them up and I posted on them from time to time and just let them sort of chill and mellow while the website was coming together. But I hope to make it, much more active. And so, people can check me out on Twitter at highest good well, because there was a character limit. So it's not wellness, it's at highest good well. But yeah, just searching that should sort of and I think in your show notes, you'll put up specific links. Yeah.
Links to all.
Now I need clients. That's the next step. It's like actually getting clients. And I offer almost all of my services virtually because, first of all, Reiki is not dependent upon time, space, or proximity. And so I thought I really want to expand the model. I don't want there to be any impediments to being able to receive these services. And I love going in person to get Reiki, but I know for a fact that, you can get the same benefits to your spirit, just like this. We could be having a Reiki session right now, just this way. It's that easy. So.
Yeah. And I was so excited because I know you had been offering in-person sessions for a little while in your area, but when I saw your website and realized that you were opening up and offering your services through Skype, I was like, I got to get her on the podcast. So
yes,
share her.
Thank you for that. Yeah. And I still will offer them in person. Like if people are local to the Baltimore area, a couple of friends of mine have a business. It's primarily a men's grooming business, but they have wellness, like healing and wellness practices that they offer on their premises. And they have different practitioners, like they have an acupuncturist, and I'm not even sure I know the full cadre of their offerings, but they, when I have appointments that are set up, they do let me use their space to offer Reiki. And I believe I refer to them like on the Reiki's tab of my website. Mm-hmm. If you go, it mentions that in-person sessions can be, done at our spot in Baltimore, and there's a link to their website. But yeah, I don't want to be limited, to one time or place, or like, every other Saturday morning. I want people to be able to, hop on Skype with me and like get a single 1-card tarot reading if that's what they want, or Reiki and tarot, or so I thought there are so many, we don't have to be limited anymore. And that is one of the gifts of technology, is that we can do wellness via the internet.
Yeah, that's the thing that I love. Like people can look at the negative aspects of social media or technology, but it's just like any other tool. You can use it to do amazing, wonderful things, or you can use it to, we don't have to talk about that, but
Yeah.
So you offer Reiki, and you offer the card readings and life coaching, right?
Yes, exactly. And the life coaching sessions, can happen on a platform like this, like via Zoom or Skype or whatever one's, preferred meeting video vendor is, or just over the phone. And I am very newly certified in holistic life coaching, but I did an independent study in it about a year ago, and then I did the materials again, specifically for the purpose of becoming certified. I believe in coaching. I believe in offering people, again, practical tools to help them sort of understand like what it means to come into full alignment. And so that is the newest official, offering. But I'm anxious to, try my hand at that, with some clients, and just like learn from them, and just sort of, and again, this is not it's not the success coaching model. Like, you can't say to me, I want to lose 50 pounds. And I'm like, all right, in 5 months, you're going to lose these 50 pounds or your money back. It's not that. It's more like, let's look at the whole of your life together. And I can sort of, help to guide you through coming to your own place of empowerment, like whatever that means, like basically examining the stuck place, and let's try to get unstuck. Let's try to get you, like, let me empower you to unstick yourself,
Right. Yeah. And you have the certification, but you also have like the life lessons, because you went through it and you've unstuck yourself. And so, of course, I think we're all like I feel like I'm just like peeling away layers, like every year, every so often. It's like you come to this point where you're like, oh yeah, this feels uncomfortable. Let's take off another layer of old beliefs. So it's like it's an ongoing process for me.
Right. Yeah. I really want to get to the point, Michelle, where I spend every day meditating, offering Reiki, receiving Reiki, giving tarot card readings, and like, talking to people on the phone or in person, and being like, how can we make you feel more empowered? How can we empower each other if it's in a community setting? I just think that's a beautiful way to spend your day. Like, can you imagine if that's all of your work? It's like podcasting and talking to other like spiritual thought leaders, and, going on retreats, and like, waking up and doing the warrior pose and yoga. I just think that I'm trying to get to the point where that's like what my life is.
Yeah. You're on the path. You're telling
Indeed.
that story, seeing that vision. I was going to ask you though, we talked a little bit about the oracle cards and my brain kind of fuzzed out there for a minute. Have you had experiences? I'm not even sure how to ask it, but I know for myself, because it's interesting, as we talked about, like you're a desire guiding, but then you see these cards and you know that like the answers that you're getting are so very clear that, and so spot on. And the same thing I think happens for me with astrology sometimes too. Like you look up something and you're like, oh yeah, it makes total sense. Is that kind of, have you had experiences like that have brought you to more of, I guess, a belief or an allowing of more of this in your life? Because you're like me, we both came from more of that, or at least I'm thinking that we came from more of that conservative Christian background as children. And then like, we were like, I don't know, this seems scary. But then, I don't know, did you have experiences that made you open up to it, or is just a gradual?
Both. See, for me, I never doubted the validity of what a lot of people would call the dark arts. You know what I mean? Like tarot and spell casting, or I mean, I keep saying spell casting because it's the most extreme example that I can think of. It's what the images my mind were filled with, you know, as a young girl growing up in the evangelical church. And it's not that. I think the way that it was spun for me or taught to me is that it's not that those things didn't have validity. It's what they were sourced in. You know, there was like good and there was bad. And the whole idea, like even Satan has powers, you know what I mean? And just, you know, to use this like very scary, very intense language. And so I thought, oh, this is absolutely real. It's more like, what do I want to be trafficking in? You know, again, let's go back to intentions.
Right.
Is it meant for good or is it meant for evil? And this whole idea around like, you know, fortune telling and, you know, just all of the, before you unpack it all and sort of parse it for yourself and like break it down to, okay, well, it's about energy. And if energy is reflecting who I am and where I am, it's not so much about predicting the future. It's more about, it's just another way it's another mirror to say, okay, this is sort of, you know, I'm feeling this sense of dis-ease or like disconnection or inauthenticity in a situation. And my theory is that with cards in particular, they might give you some insight into what's happening behind the scenes or what's coming that you don't know. But more than anything, they're showing you where you are right now. And so I say all of that to say, it might be a roundabout way of saying I always respected the validity of it. It was more, is it good? Is it evil? And I always want to be on the side of like, what's right. I don't want to unintentionally wade into dark waters, not know what I'm doing, and basically summon something that I don't want, you know, I don't want to deal with the ramifications of.
Right.
But once I got past that hurdle and I could say, you know, let me take some of the lore and the scariness out of this and just reduce it down, you know, to what it is. It's about energy. And so I think the very first Oracle card deck I had was the energy Oracle cards. And I was like, okay, I can get with this because it's basically saying, it's just showing you where you are right now, you know, and I took all the scary language out of it and like not even knowing what I was doing. Like my first shuffle, I just drew 3 cards, like a past, present, you know, future reading. Mm-hmm. And I had a situation in mind and I thought, okay, these cards are, you know, really reflect what I think I'm going through. But like, you know, I'm a tester. I've got to like, you know, got to keep trying to like break the system. I was like, all right, well, let me ask another question another way. And then I kind of learned the right way to frame a question so that it was meaningful. Mm-hmm. And without fail, whether I liked the cards I got or not, I found them to be accurate. You know, sometimes I love the cards I got. And sometimes I was like, oh, I hate these cards. I'm going to draw again. And I would get either the same cards or I would get cards that in effect meant the same thing.
Yep.
And,
there.
Yeah. Right. So, but sometimes like the situation is more philosophical and open-ended. And so any cards you get aren't going to be necessarily on point in terms of like, you know, their predictive ability, but they really, you feel in sync with it. And I know when I'm off, when I get like cards that don't make any sense, I'm like, okay, I need to step back, reset, meditate, or come back later, because basically the cards are reflecting my jumbled energy, or they're reflecting the fact that the question I'm asking isn't really clear.
Yeah.
But as with anything, you know, you want to get aligned. You want to focus, breathe, and just sort of open yourself up and like let go of your attachment to an outcome to get the best reading. And so I just started to collect more and more Oracle cards, both in app form and in physical deck form. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was open to the tarot piece, or like specifically, this is a tarot deck. It's not an angel card. It's not, you know, fairies. It's just, this is straight up tarot. Classic Rider-Waite deck. And I have many different tarot decks now, but when I finally said, nope, all right, I have to own it. I like, you know, I'm into these cards. Some of the readings I did for myself and others were accurate to the point of almost being a little bit scary. Not scary in the sense of like, oh, I'm doing something bad, I shouldn't be doing this, but I thought, holy crap, Like there is definitely like a divination of truth element, to this.
Yeah.
Like, sure, they're reflecting my energy, but in some cases I could see. And what became amazing to me is like, okay, so that the tarot deck, the cards all have a general meaning, but then there's your intuitive, like, third eye, other sight piece, like your intuition as a reader that comes into it. And there were times when I would do a reading and I would say, okay, this is the Queen of Wands, and I know what this card means generally, but I would get a very clear insight about what that card meant to this person in this situation, and like who it represented. And sometimes, like, just going on nothing but the question the person asked of the deck, not knowing any more details, I would say, oh, this Queen of Wands has nefarious intentions. You know what I mean? I would see that. It's like I would feel it. It's like a story beyond the story of the cards would begin to reveal itself. So I've definitely had that moment of satisfaction where it's not you're satisfied because you like the cards you got, but you spiritual satisfaction being like, no, I've actually tapped in to like the deeper implications of the question I'm asking. So for sure.
Yeah, I almost feel like for me, like the traditional tarot decks, like the Rider-Waite and stuff, they have an energy of them. And I mean, it's a total different thing, but in a way it's similar to Reiki, because Reiki, like the symbols that you work with in that energy, has had so many people putting, you know what I'm saying? So many people focused on it that there is a definite power. And like, I've seen that too with like some of the Hindu chants. Like I can chant my own mantra and that definitely has power for me. But sometimes if I chant one of these ancient chants, I'm tapping into the energy of like millions of people who chanted the same thing. And I feel like tarot has, some of the older decks have that same energy because so many people have worked with them. And so it's almost like you can tap into that magic that they put
in. It's like the collected combined energy of like generations and like, centuries. Because Rider-Waite will be 100 years old next year. But it's interesting too. It's like for the longest time, like when I first looked at the Rider-Waite cards, they made no sense to me because I'm like, everybody looks sort of pissed off or unhappy on all these cards. So I literally, like, just before I, did some deeper reading and deeper diving and took the time to take a course, I was like, I don't get any particular feeling just by looking at these because, this queen looks pissed off. This guy looks unhappy. Like, and now that I know, like, I know what the cards mean, but also I've touched them and I've interacted with them and I've gotten like aligned, with the system of like, what tarot is, like, the suites and the numbers and, the different, court cards versus, major arcana and minor arcana. Now that I understand what that all means, it's like I can look at any, Queen of Wands, whether it's a classic Rider-Waite or like a more interpretive, like subjective card, and the energy of that card is available to me and accessible to me because I have, availed myself of it. But at first I was like, well, if I was just having to guess, I'm like, this lady looks pissed, that dude looks mad. Nobody, I was like, I can't. And like, I would see something like, oh, for example, the King of Cups is like, basically a very mature, spiritually inclined, intuitive, like gifted, artistic guy. And I'm like, to me, he just looks kind of mad, So I would never get that from this card. And this is like so stupid. I'm going to go back to my, ask the fairies or ask the dolphins cards because like I couldn't really get it. But no, I'm fully ensconced now. Yeah, I'm a tarot reader. I consult. I believe in drawing a card daily just to sort of say, what's the dominant energy today? What should I be aware of? What should I watch out for? It's a very roundabout way of answering your question, but yes, in effect, I have had that experience. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I love that experience of tapping into the energy of the cards. And I think I'm slow sometimes because it took me forever to like connect. And then when I started connecting like the different suits and how you've got your water, your air, your fire, your earth, and the same that runs through astrology and all this stuff. Like, oh, mind blown, it's all connected.
Exactly. And that helped me a ton because I got into astrology right away as a kid. Like I didn't have to, there was no resistance in me to that. Like, well, not initially. Years later, I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to, whatever. Not supposed to be giving that validity, but I never ever really let go of astrology because I was like, no, I get it. This resonates, this connects. And then understanding that like it's much deeper than your sun sign. You know, when you look at your birth chart, you've got a rising sign and a moon sign and your house placements and your aspects. And I'm like, oh, it's like a very it's like your cosmological DNA chart.
Yeah.
You know, so many people are like, oh, this is so dumb, I'm supposedly this, but I don't feel like that. I'm like, oh, because you've got all these other things influencing it and aspecting it. And so once I was like, oh, okay, wands are fire, cups are water, that immediately helped me because that was a system I already understood. So
yeah, me too. And I don't know why it took me so long for all those little connections to come up when they did. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. It makes sense. But I love the fact, like, for astrology, and I think the cards too, like, yeah, you can use them to see where you are, like what the weather in your life is.
Right.
But the weather is going to shift, and in your own life, you have a certain amount of control over that weather, you know, in where you shift it.
Right.
Because I don't want to say like my chart says I'm this way, so I am. And like one of the teachers that I studied astrology with was Kim Faulkner, and she does it from the law of attraction perspective. Her and Jeanette Ma, they I think it's Good Vibe Astrology, which I love the way they're like, this is not like creating you, it's just showing you who you are.
Right.
You came in who you are, and you know all these things, and it lined up with you. You didn't necessarily, you don't have to line up with it. It's just, you know, it's just another tool to figure out who you are, and you're not like necessarily like, you know, I don't know. I always find it funny when people freak out over Mercury retrograde, things like that. And, you know, because it's just like when you learn how to ride it and, you know, surf the weather. So it's more like, yeah, for me, I think it's more like checking the weather report, and the tarot is like kind of the same thing. And I don't know.
Absolutely. And I never want, like, my philosophy around spirituality and wellness and wholeness and healing is that none of it removes personal agency. You know what I mean? None of it takes away our responsibility. I never want anybody to think that what I would be selling is the idea that, well, these are what your cards say, or, you know, you didn't feel anything during this Reiki session, so that's kind of what you're consigned to. That's your life. It's like, okay, well, we start with, again, like you say, checking the weather. Where are we right now? How are we feeling? How do we want to feel? And there are always things that we do or don't do that, you know, get us to certain places or keep us stuck. All of these are meant to be tools that are helpful and hopefully give us some interesting information so we know like where we want to take it next. We're always responsible, I believe, to participate in our own healing and our own wholeness. And it's not that there isn't a spiritual element. I absolutely believe in divine timing and synchronicity and, you know, things lining up. But I think that we see things line up and we feel our synchronicity possibilities when we show up, when we're present. Mm-hmm. And when we are, you know, paying attention and availing ourselves and learning to break down our various resistances to our own growth. And so I never want to, you know, be the proverbial, you know, Wizard of Oz sailing through towns in a hot air balloon, promising anything except hopefully, you know, maybe being a conduit for connection. And like, I don't mean I am a person's conduit to healing or connection, but like a person who just shares information about how we can tap into that, because authentic living is like practicing your spirituality in a way that like makes you feel empowered, that helps you to go. And it may not look like it looks for me. And I just don't believe that anything is completely off the table in terms of like like the pieces that you can bring together to live an authentic life. And it's more about helping you to see what that is. So let's go back to the tarot really briefly. if a card is coming up for you consistently, like for a while, every time I drew any card for any, or a set of cards for any reason, the King of Cups was always coming up, no matter what I was asking about. Not only, but, you know, in concert with other cards, sometimes alone. And I thought, okay, this is a court card, you know, from the, you know, the cups are water. That's the heart. That's the emotion. This, you know, when it's a court card and it's a king or a queen, it almost always represents a person as opposed to an influence. Not necessarily, but almost always this is a person. And so I just had to ask myself, okay, well, who is the King of Cups? You know, who is that? What is that influence? What is my life trying to call into itself? And so it's just a tool. You know what I mean? It's not about becoming a slave to cards or your horoscope or anything. It's saying, this is a recurring theme. My soul wants me to examine that, or there's something I need to open up to, or there's a question I need to ask. And so you can sort of bring all those pieces together and make them work for you. And then, you know, until you learn that lesson or embrace that possibility, or, you know, look under that rock and overturn that stone, you won't be able to go on to the next thing. So it's just about, you know, it's just a way to, also, don't people want to feel magic? I want to feel magic all the time.
Yeah. And I like what you were talking about too, about like whether or not you're asking the right question.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that a lot of times, like maybe some of the old school tarot readers who do that, like, you know, where the people come in and they want you to tell them what's going to happen. Whereas I think, and you can probably tell like what kind of questions you feel like open people up to more growth and to more connection to magic. But to me, it's more like the questions of like, you know, like what energy do I need to embody to be where I want to be, or what's the next step that's going to bring me my highest good, or something like that, other than tell me exactly what's coming up next for me in my life. More like what energy or something.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes, like, you know, I think a much better question is, like you said, what do I need to embody? What energy is present in the situation? What can I learn? What does the situation want to teach me? Like, I get it. Sometimes you're like, is this guy good for me or not? Am I going to get this job? And the cards can tell you that, you know, they can certainly give you that hint, but, they can also tell you why you don't really want that job you're asking about, you know, or what that relationship will show you about yourself, as opposed to whether or not are we going to get married. I was laid off a few months ago. My position was eliminated at my company, and I had been coming to a place in my own heart where I knew I wanted to really give my time and my attention to getting my wellness business off the ground. But, you know, when you have any type of like regular commitment or 9 to 5, your emotional real estate for, you know, devoting time to other things is like really limited. And you have to really, really be committed to do that work, to starting an entire new job on top of the job that you have. And, you know, so when I was laid off, I could sort of feel it coming. I didn't have solid proof, but we often feel things, you know, in the spirit realm before they sort of materialize. And I was a tarot student at that, and I'm still a tarot student, but I was taking an actual course online to try to understand the deck better and its system. And so as a part of my practice and homework, you know, I would do readings and for myself, and I would ask, you know, the questions of the cards. I was practicing different spreads. And whenever I asked about my job, I would get the Tower card and the Death card. No matter what other cards came along, those were always there. And I was like, this will be coming to an end soon, because it was consistent. And also just applying my intuition along with the knowledge of what cards meant, I thought there is an upheaval coming. There is something that wants to be raised so that something else can come forward. And, you know, the Tower card, it's a scary looking card. You've got people jumping out of a building that's on fire. And the Death card doesn't really mean that someone's going to die, but it does mean that something has to give. Something has to move out of the way to make room for something new. So the day that I had the meeting where I was informed that I was being laid off, I had already done 5 or 6 tarot card readings that told me it was coming. And so I was able to sit there in perfect peace and, you know, just sort of receive the news. And it actually prepared me for that result. And I don't think I'm not one of those people. It's like, you take the first reading at face value, because it is so much about your energy. You ask the question a different way, or you get more insight into, okay, not just, am I going to lose my job, but what is next, for me? What should I be opening myself up to? How can I be prepared, for what's coming? So yeah, I remember telling my best friend, I said, I don't know if my company knows it, but they're getting ready to let me go. And she's like, okay. And I said, I'm telling you, every time I do a reading, Tower and Death, I'm like, something's coming to an end, and I'm aware of it. I said, I don't think they've made the choice yet, but the cards are telling me that's the choice they're going to make. So yeah, it was just, they can be very predictive and specific in that way. But more than anything, the King of Cups card is coming up. It's like, you want to do something focused on the heart. You want to do something that relies upon your intuition and your spirit life. And so that was the deeper meaning. It's not just like, this is being destroyed. It's like, but this is what wants to come forward. The cards will always tell you the answer to the question that you have, but that you're not really asking.
Yes.
I've had that experience many times where I'm like, oh, this is actually answering the question I was afraid to ask, because, that property is also there.
You don't always want that. You already kind of know that answer. But
yeah, exactly.
Ask and get the confirmation.
Exactly. You're like, let me ask this other adjacent question.
Well, we're almost at an hour. We are at an hour. So just real quickly, if you have do you have any tips if someone is just curious about the cards and starting out? What would you suggest?
I would suggest if they're interested in working with them themselves, a really low stakes way to sort of wade into those waters is to, maybe you don't want to purchase a physical deck, but try the trial versions of apps. Go to the app store. And, you can buy the app version of the classic tarot deck or any number of other oracle card decks if you want to start off with something that's not specifically tarot, but just to sort of get a feel. And almost all of the apps, like the energy deck, the romance angel cards, the Wisdom of the Oracle by Colette Baron Reed is one of my favorite decks. I have it in app form and in physical form. And just try it without paying for it. For 6 or 7 days, you can sort of get a feel for it. And I would say that if you want to get a reading, if you're not sure, if maybe you don't want yourself to work with decks or to traffic in them as a giver of readings, I would say that, one of the services I offer is not just tarot. If a person wanted to work with oracle cards, and ask, but they were like, I'm really not into the tarot specifically, but I don't mind, you using another deck. One of the offerings I have is a simple 1-card reading for $7, 10 to 15 minutes. And that would be a small way to sort of wade in and see what you think. But yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking your time. I always love talking to you, and I could go on forever, but I know.
I forgot that we were doing a podcast. It felt like we were just chatting.
I know, right? But I'm going to put all the links to your Twitter and Facebook and your website, and just in case somebody's wanting to look it up, it's highestgoodwellness.com, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And I'll put all those links in the show notes so you guys can link up with Salimah, and I know that anybody who does will love your energy as much as I do, because you come from a very light and heart open place, and I just enjoy talking to you and connecting with you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great to talk to you.
You too. Well, have a great day, and we'll chat again soon.
We'll chat again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Oops, I turned it all off. Okay. Meeting.